And it looks like we're live. Welcome everyone to the Sisters interview. I'm a Shaxi from Ontario. This is my sister Sarifkin. And we have been interviewing folks for about a year and a couple months now. Whoops.
Sorry.
We're still having technical issues. It's awesome.
I guess I was listening to something on my phone earlier and I forgot. Sorry.
That's okay. I need to do the same on my phone. Anyway, hi. Welcome to our very special guest tonight, Sir Kelwin Ratslayer, Order of the Pelican, and Griffin of Artemisia. Hi, Kelwin.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Super excited to have you in our last episode before we go on a little hiatus. You're the perfect closure. So, you know the drill. How did you find the SCA and what got you interested?
So back in my college days, I had a job one summer working out in Dugway, Utah, and we would hop in cars and drive down for the week. And one of the gentlemen that was working down there with me, his name was Dave Brink. One day we were just chatting and I was talking about how my boyfriend was really into medieval history and so was I, and we gamed and everything. And so he was like, well, I think this group might interest you. So he gave me some information and I took it back to my boyfriend. And that week while we were down in Dugway, he went to a fighter practice and he thought it was great because when he got there, it turned out nobody in the group drank, but they had this bottle of mead. And so they decided, well, we'll just give it to this new guy because he drinks. So Lee thought this was the greatest thing in the world. He goes to this fighter practice and he gets a bottle of mead. So that weekend, he drugged me to a little get together and we kind of started playing a little bit with boffers. And then over the next couple of weeks, we got to know the people. And then we decided to go to our first real event, which was up in Bozeman, Montana, and it was a coronet list. It was the 4th coronet list for Artemisia. So we went up to that, and I pretty much was hooked from that point on. So, and then it was probably a couple more months later. It was in January when I got into armor for the first time.
What year was that?
1989 is when I started. So a while ago.
Were you interested in the fighting from the beginning or did you talk yourself?
Oh yeah. Yeah. That was the whole reason for me was to go for the fighting. I mean, I love medieval history too, but I played sports all my life. I've always been super active in team sports, especially. And so it was just, and all the years growing up, I always thought knights and, were the coolest thing. So it really fit my niche.
Awesome. Did you start out in loner armor or did you build your own armor? How did that come about for you?
So I started out in loner armor, but I only was in armor a couple of times before my first Estrella. And by Estrella, I had god awful ugly armor made out of carpet in pickle barrel. And when I got to Estrella, I was borrowing this big great helm. And I'm extremely claustrophobic. And the very first practice I ever was in armor, I was wearing that great helm and the padding came down and covered my eyes and I totally freaked out. So the first thing I did when I got to Estrella was I went in search of a helm. And I have a pretty tiny head, but I just happened to find this helm for $45 that just happened to fit me. And I padded it that day and went out and fought in it and ended up with a black eye. Because if you don't pad your helm correctly the first time, you know what? You might end up with a black eye.
Who did you buy a helmet from for $45?
God, I don't even remember who it was. It was so long ago. The one thing I do know, it was like once somebody who was actually in armor looked at it, they figured the reason I got it was so cheap is because they cut out the front incorrectly. So it was really the back. And so that's why it was just kind of a little wonky. And it looked like I was like one of the coneheads from Saturday Night Live because it was up pretty tall. So, but hey, it was mine.
That's important.
And it fit a lot better than that great helm. So
did you like war fighting right away?
Oh yeah. although I have to say I had a really bad experience in one of the battles. At the time, the prince, who was Avalok, had 2 squires, and we were all on the bridge battle waiting, and we were the reserves. And I was standing there, and I'm brand new, and his 2 squires came running by and told me to get the F out of the way, and were so rude to me. And I was so upset because that's not the behavior I was expecting. And I walked off the field. But I then went and did pickups, and I met now Duchess Alicia, and she was a squire at the time, and we did some pickups, and so I was totally sold at that point.
Alicia from Anstioria that lives up here now, like like Dame Alicia.
Yeah.
Okay. She's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I was just we were walking off the field, and we ran into this woman fighter, and I started asking her questions, and she worked with me for a little bit. It was awesome. I was really impressed with her. And then I was really excited years later when she got knighted.
Very cool.
Very cool. Were there other women fighting in your area at that time, or were you kind of on your own as far as that
So
goes?
when I first joined, I had heard of Sir Leah Dispenser, but I didn't meet her right away. And after I'd been in armor a couple of months, Varia Goff started in the SCA, and she also became a fighter. So there were 2 of us in our group that were fighting. So so for a little while there were 2 of us, and then she took a break for a while, and then for a while it was just me, and then occasionally another woman would jump in and show up for a while. And then my friend Janine, who started fighting, and for like probably 4 or 5 years, we ran around together fighting. So.
Awesome.
And then I finally met Leah, and that was great because she's amazing.
So did you have a mentor at the beginning?
I yes and no. The gentleman who got me in armor, Lord Bjartney, who had moved to Artemisia from Kaid, really did work with me and help me out in the very beginning. It was his armor that I borrowed. He's the one who was super encouraging from the beginning. And so I was really lucky that I had somebody who took me serious from the very beginning. And then I'm trying to think when I met Gareth. I think 2 years later, or a year and a half later, I met Gareth, who would eventually become my knight for a while. But I've had a lot of wonderful people in the SCA that have mentored me, so I've been very lucky in that respect.
Did you know that you wanted to be on the chivalry path?
Yes, from the very beginning.
And
because to me, the coolest thing about fighting is it's not just a sport, it's a sport with that extra, and the extra part is the honor and the chivalry that goes along with being a knight. And so that's what really was more driving, more so than becoming a better fighter. It was more I wanted to be that knightly person.
I love that. So it sounds like you went to Australia pretty early on in your career. And something that I know about you is that you've traveled a lot and made a lot of friends in a lot of places. How do you think that has influenced your game?
Oh, it's the best thing a person can ever do. There was a point in time in my little shire where we had a lot of angst going on. And the only thing that saved me from walking away from the game was the fact that I had been traveling and meeting new people. So it changes your perspective. Your little local politics don't seem that important anymore because you realize that there's just so much more out there.
have you played in the same area your whole time?
Pretty much. I started out in Logan, Utah, and then I moved up to, well, actually I moved over to Montrose, Colorado, which was still part of Artemisia. And I was there for probably 6 months. It was right after I graduated college. I was trying to find a job. And then I moved up to Boise, or actually Mountain Home, Boise area. And then pretty much have been here most of the time. I had a brief time down in Twin Falls, but it's all part of Artemisia. So always in Artemisia.
So I want to go back to what Ashaxi was talking about in your travels. What have you always been an adventurous person? I mean, because you have friends everywhere. So what sort of spurned that, like, and made you go visit other kingdoms?
I think it actually stems from the fact that when I was a kid, we moved quite a bit. So I would experience new places. We started out in Colorado. We moved to Montana. Then we were in Hawaii. Then we were back to Colorado. And then we were back to Hawaii. And then I went to college in Montana and Utah. And I really like seeing different areas. And so I think it just kind of spilled over into the SCA. And really with Artemisia, the way it was, you had to travel if you wanted to do anything. And because your groups were so far away and you would have to travel 8 hours a lot of times to get to an event. And I just got into the habit of doing that. And then from there, it was like, well, I had an opportunity to go to Antir, and this was in 95. My friend was princess at the time, and she wanted to go over us and go visit. And I went over to Antir, and I fought in my first Squire's tourney. And then I was like, I'm coming back. I love the Squire's tourney. It was so much fun. I'm coming back anytime I can. And so that started it. And then we started a war with Avical when they were still a principality. And I met a lot of cool people there. So I started traveling up there as well. So
is that Whipping Winds?
Actually, at the time, it was Griffin's Fury.
Griffin's Fury.
Whipping Winds kind of came after Griffin's Fury. We kept getting burned out of our sites and Griffin's Fury. So it went, it ended. They ended it, and then Whipping Winds eventually came back up out of that. So,
oh, it just went out of my head. I hate that.
Were Avalok and Laurelin your first prince and princess?
No, actually, technically, my first prince and princess was Raphael and Kyrie, who now live in Antir. My first event was the coronet that Avalok won for a lady named Saika. It was before he and Laurelin got together. As a side note, one of the squires who told me to get the F out of the way was actually Laurelin's husband at the time. So, and I met Laurelin at my very first event.
Was she already impressive back then?
Yes. I can still picture I walked in the way at the event, and there was like a bar there, just not an actual working bar, but a bar set up, and she was sitting on top of the bar swinging her legs. And I just, for some reason, I started talking to her, and that was the beginning of our friendship.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So your knighthood path it was pretty long, and we'll talk about that some more, but you had sort of, I don't know if I'd call it a diversion, but also an affinity for service. Can you tell us how you got into that and what your specialty is and what you love about it?
I got into service mostly because I get bored easy, and I don't like not having anything to do at events. And plus there was a need in my local group when I first started. We were pretty small, and so they needed somebody to run an event. And so I volunteered. I'd been in 5 months at that point, and I volunteered to run an event. And then from there, I met a couple people that were into heraldry, and they got me really interested in heraldry. And so I eventually became the local herald there. And over the years, I became the Principality Herald. And then technically I was the first Kingdom Herald for Artemisia. So I think heraldry was one of my areas, but I've run a lot of events over the years. Part of it is because I want to be helpful and be part of the group. And so sometimes the events, people are afraid to step forward and volunteer to run events. And so in the beginning, I had no problems doing that. And it was fun. I got to meet a lot of people that way. And I did other things too. I mean, you'd go to an event, you weren't running it, and somebody needed to wash the dishes. And I found out that if I went in and washed the dishes, especially when I was really new to the SCA, it was a great way to meet people. And I met a lot of people washing dishes. So, you know, the service, and who's going to say no when you want to come in and help wash dishes? No one. So but I got to know a lot of people that way. So I guess my service has been all over the place.
How long were you in before you got your first peerage?
About 6 years. So I was just shy of 6 years, I guess, technically.
Is that fast in Artemisia, or is that about normal?
I would say it's a little fast, but not like screaming fast. So I honestly think the reason I got recognized as quickly as I did was not necessarily my body of work, but the fact everybody knew who I was because of the Ratslayer name. I mean, you don't forget Ratslayer. And I was one of the few women who was out on the field, so I was very noticeable, and people got to know who I was very quickly because of that. So I don't think I did anything extraordinary. I think I really do truly believe name recognition was important.
And were you elevated as a pelican in the Kingdom of Artemisia, or were they still part of Atenvelt back then?
We were still part of Atenvelt.
So I mean, that's pretty huge, because at the time Atenvelt was huge.
It was.
And you guys were not very close to Central.
No, and I actually got my pelican from a Southern crown. So
when Artemisia was still part of Atenvelt, how often did you play down in core Atenvelt? Did you fight in crowns down there?
You know, I actually don't think I ever actually went down and fought in a crown down in Atenvelt. I went to Estrella every year. I didn't miss an Estrella for 14 years. I fought in crowns, but only when they were up in the northern part. I only went down a few times. Because it was just I was just finishing up college, and then after college I didn't really land a good solid job for a couple of years, so I had to limit my travel to things that were pretty close, or people were going and I could jump in with them, because I didn't have a reliable car.
And that's something that you sort of have passed on now. Like you have a tendency to say, hey, I'm going to such and such place, who wants to come and share a ride with me?
Yep. I think that's one of the things that I see less and less in the SCA is a group of people piling into the car and then going to an event. That was some of the most fun I had, was traveling with 3 or 4 people or in a caravan of multiple vehicles. And we all just went to an event together, and then we camped together, and it was just super fun. And now I tend to travel a lot by myself, but occasionally I'll drag someone else with me. So. Yeah. I'm going anyway, so if somebody wants to go, they might as well jump in with me. So.
I think that's something I've kind of missed out on in the SCA. Is I can only remember once or twice doing that. Carpool.
You can have bad experiences too, but I would say 99% of my experiences were good. Thank goodness. I only really had one bad experience. So very fortunate.
Tell us about how you met your former knight and why you chose him.
So there was briefly a war that was an Aten Outlands war. It was before Estrella got weird and all the factions and such happened, but there was an Aten Outlands war, and a group of us drove down, and we all set up in camp, and we were walking around, and there was a gentleman walking around with a cat. I'm a cat lover, and I saw this cat, and so I had to go meet the cat and started talking to him, and it turned out he was also from Artemisia and a fighter. And then through him, and that was Gareth. And at the time he was a squire to Sir Richard Avonsley. And I met Richard and Sorsha that weekend as well. And we just really clicked. And we started a really good friendship. And so he had mentioned that if he ever got knighted, he would be he took me on as a man-at-arms, and he was interested if he ever got knighted he would take me on as a squire. And so when he got knighted, I think he got knighted in 92 or 93. Eventually he took me on as a squire, and we had that relationship till I think it was 2008 when I gave my belt back. And mostly that was because he really wasn't playing much, and he lived 10 hours away from me. So there really wasn't a lot of training going on anyways. And a lot of times with your knight, it's, one of the responsibilities of the knight is to help you become a peer of the realm. But I'd already been a peer for a long time. So I had already felt I had the inner workings of how that was done. And so because there wasn't a lot of training going on, I gave my belt back. He did still continue to call people in my local group and ask how I was doing. And whenever we were at events together, I tended to play squire. So, but one of the coolest things he did in our relationship was at Estrella every year, he would pay me for my services as a squire. And that was, he bought me an ice cream cone. And so that's how I got paid. And one year he forgot. And so I was telling Sir Basil at the time about how Gareth always buys me an ice cream cone. And he's like, well, I'll buy you an ice cream cone if you'll be a squire for me for the year. And I said, well, yeah, with the understanding that if Gareth's around, then Gareth comes first. And he's like, yeah, that's fine. So he bought me an ice cream cone. And that started a tradition for me. Every Estrella somebody new would buy me an ice cream cone, or Basil would try to get me every year. And so then I had a little bit of a war going on of who was going to buy me an ice cream cone, so I'd be their squire for a year. And that really helped out because Gareth wasn't around a lot. So
was that sort of a fun thing, or did you
it was so much fun. I loved it because I liked being a squire. I liked having a purpose. I liked taking care of somebody. So
I totally get that. Yeah. It's one of the weirdest transitions after you get knighted is letting people take care of you when you were used to taking care of other people. I don't think I'm actually used to it yet.
Maybe in another 20 years.
What were you going to ask, Ashaxi? I'm sorry.
I was going to ask if the people that took you as a squire for a year, if they actively fostered you, did they actively train you and fulfilled their role as knight?
Yes and no. A lot of times there were people I really knew quite well, and so we would fight and they would help me out, but I didn't really have any true serious training for a very long time. That, it was back in the day when training in a lot of areas didn't really mean anything other than just going out and fighting each other as much as you could stand on, for the day.
You come from a fairly strong athletic background though, right?
Yeah, I played sports all my life. So I think I started playing sports in 4th grade. I played softball. That was the beginning. And then by 6th grade, I was playing basketball. And then I played sports all through high school.
How do you think your sports background helped you as a fighter?
Probably one of the biggest things that it helped me as is realizing that there's steps that you have to take in order to achieve your objective. So instead of, I'm not going to throw my flat snap perfect right away, there's little things I have to do to get to that point in order to throw that flat snap correctly. And also, it also gave me, I guess, the persistence, knowing that if I wanted to be better in a sport, I had to practice. Not that I necessarily followed that ideal for quite a many years, but, so.
Do you think that it made you more coachable?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. I took a break for a while from fighting, and one of the things I did was I played women's professional football, and quite a few of those women had never played sports before, and it was amazing the difference between those of us who had, how we adapted and listened to the coaches and understood what they were trying to tell us, or when they were being total, assholes to you, yelling at you, how different it was because I had that background and that they didn't. And I think that transitioned over into fighting as well.
So let's talk a little bit about your path. You and I crossed paths through the Iron Rose thing, right?
Yeah, okay. Through the Iron Rose.
Okay. So how did that impact you as a fighter, or your outlook as a fighter, being part of that online community for a while?
I'm going to be totally honest.
That's fine.
if it wasn't for a couple of women on that list, I don't know, I would have pulled my hair out, because so much of that list was, to me, felt like it was an excuse not to get on the field, or an excuse why people weren't getting better. And I remember when you posted a response to something about, you have to work, you have to do this, you know, you have to have a goal, you have to be persistent, and people were saying really rude things to you, and that kind of stuff happened all the time. And I sent you, and I mean, and I specifically remember sitting at my computer thinking, I'm going to send an email to this person because I 100% agree with everything she's saying. And so I sent you an email, and really it was one of the best things ever, because you've been a strong influence and a big help for me as, you know, on my path.
And,
so,
and to be fair, we were both unbelted back then.
Yes, yeah. yes. And the first time we ever fought, we probably went around 50-50. And the next time it was like, I might as well have not brought my sword, because I was dead just like that every time.
I honestly don't remember it that way, but whatever.
I do. Because I was so amazed at how quickly you improved, but then you would talk about how you were training, and it was obvious that what you were doing was good, and your training and such. So, I mean, it taught me that training was important. It just took me another 15 years before I actually bothered to do it, but but I still had fun the whole time.
Right. And I think that's one of the coolest things about your path, is how much you embraced your passion for fighting and having fun while fighting, and didn't get discouraged by not having the cookie. Because I think a lot of people in similar situations to you, you know, get discouraged and they stop. So can you talk about that a little bit?
When I'm on the field, I just have this joy that I can't even describe. And the first time, especially in a melee, the first time you go into that fray, and you're just, there's so much chaos, and you're just doing stuff, and you kill somebody, or, you know, something happens. It's wonderful. And it's just so much fun. And I just, every time I fought, almost, I had so much fun that I didn't really, I mean, I cared about becoming a knight, and there were periods in time where I was super discouraged. But then I would remind myself that the real important part was I was having fun. And it just, I am super, super, super stubborn. If I have something I want to do, I'm going to do it. I don't care what anybody says. I'm going to do it. Now, so I don't really know how to describe it, other than I just had so much fun. I can't imagine not fighting. I can't imagine when I've gone to events and haven't fought for various reasons. I broke an ankle when I was playing football, so I was out for a while. I had a pulmonary embolism, so I couldn't fight during that time. And I've had various other issues come up over the years, and I couldn't even go to practices because I couldn't not be doing it. So I had to stay away.
So I have to share something with you. Duke Thorfinn, I think, Brian Finn, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just said that you are the most joy-filled fighter he's ever seen. Win, lose, or draw, she always has a huge smile on her face. So that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
Don't mind me. I might.
So
go ahead.
Oh no, you go first.
No, go.
Okay, well, I was going to ask you, do you feel like the fact that you already had a peerage helped with your patience on your knighthood path, or do you think it was a hindrance? And I kind of want to couch that in a lot of people. I have heard people say that they have been disappointed getting a peerage that wasn't knighthood first, because they felt like it was going to put their knighthood off a number of years.
My Pelican didn't do that.
Yeah.
I think that what the Pelican did for me was showed me that I really truly invested in this game. And the only thing that ever held me back from becoming a knight was me. It was nothing else.
So in a way, having the Pelican helped you keep around because it like you said, it showed you were invested in it, and it kind of kept you bonded.
And I think it helped me interact more with people too. I mean, once you become a peer, it's a lot easier. I think it's a lot easier to feel like you're part of the game. You no longer feel like you're off into the side. You can go up to people and they're not going to say, oh, it's a new person. You go up to them and they know you're a peer, then there's more exchange there, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It gives you a certain amount of clout. Yeah, when you meet new people. Yeah.
Artemisia is pretty small though, so you pretty much know everybody. It's pretty hard not to. Most of the fighters, it's very rare when I was coming up that I didn't know all the fighters that were out there on the field. I watched lots of them get knighted, way before I did. And deservedly so, because they put in the work. But yeah.
So I sort of want to explore that a little bit more because you talk about how it was, nobody's fault but your own. I know that just from being part of the fighting community, Artemisia was the second to last kingdom to knight a woman, right? And I know that, that was sort of a thing. What am I trying to ask? Do you feel like there was pressure on you? Like, did people say, hey, Kelwin, when are you going to get serious? Or I'll help you get serious? Or
yes, I had quite a few knights approach me and say, what can I do to help you get to knighthood? And basically it was, I had to get to the point where I really truly was ready to put in the work. I mean, for many years, I never did any Pell work. I never did any true training. I did go to, Sagan moved into our group probably in the mid 90s, I think. And so he would teach classes, but he would teach a lot of the mental part of the game. And I was still struggling with the physical part. It took me forever to truly master the flat snap to the point where I didn't have to think about it. And that was because I didn't take the time to train, to do any Pell work. I only went and I fought. And when you just go and you fight and you don't take the time to figure out how to throw it correctly, you're always caught up in the fight and trying to win instead of figuring out why your flat snap or any of your shots are hitting so light. Because that was my biggest problem. Always light. I could find the openings, but I never hit it solid.
So I think it takes a lot of courage to take the steps back, to take the step forward. And so what was the turning point for you to do that?
Another woman was doing really well, and I really wanted to be the first. To be honest, when Marin started fighting and she was getting good, it really lit a fire under my butt. And honestly, the pulmonary embolism. When I had that pulmonary embolism, it made me realize that I may not be able to fight again. And so I decided at that point that I really wanted to do this, and I had to put in the effort, the work to do it.
Have you learned to love Pell work, or is it sort of a necessary evil?
Most of the time I love it because I really feel like I get to experiment, I get to play. It's very relaxing. And my Pell's in my bedroom, which I know is kind of odd, but I have a really big bedroom. And if my Pell's outside, it's either too hot or too cold, and my butt's not going to go out and do it. But when my Pell's in my room, I have to walk by it every night. And so when I came back after my knee replacements, I set a goal, and I didn't quite make it there, but I was going to do Pell work every day. And so I got to the point where I just loved doing it because I just felt like it was the closure for my day. and it was fun to figure out some of the shots. And then I taught myself how to do the Molinet. And the first time I ever used the Molinet in a fight, I didn't even realize I had done it until the person said, that was a really nice Molinet. And I'm like, I threw a Molinet? What? So, I mean, it kind of reinforced itself, you know, in the sense that I was making things work because of it. So I never really saw it as a chore other than like days when I was really tired and I said, I got to do it. But most of the time it's fun to do.
I want to talk about your knee replacements because I think it's super huge that you had them both done and you came back from it. Not only did you come back from it, but you excelled. So can you talk about, like, were the knee injuries SCA related or not?
Honestly, I never injured my knees. In all the years I played sports, I broke wrists, I broke ankles, but I never did anything to my knees. It was 100% genetics and arthritis. And so I would say in my late 20s, in my early 30s, I started feeling that my knees were starting to bother me. When I would go down on my knees, when I would get up, it wasn't really easy to get up. I always used my sword to push myself up. And then it progressively got worse. And so it prevented me from really moving a lot. And so I became a very static fighter, even though I was still fighting with my strapped round, which really is a more mobile style. And so it really hindered me, but it was the only time I wasn't in pain. So I was in pain most of the time from my arthritis, but when I got on the field and started fighting, the pain went away. I didn't even notice it. So did that answer your question, or did I go off on a tangent?
I don't think you went off on a tangent, but can you talk about coming back from a double knee replacement and the path coming back?
So it was a little harder than I expected. I have some pictures along the way I'll show you that I'll talk a little. I was going to talk a little bit about it, but I'll talk about it now. So when I first came back, and I was technically released to be able to start fighting again, I had a really hard time that I was walking like Frankenstein. And I did my physical therapy faithfully. I did everything they told me. I had an amazing physical therapist, which made all the difference in the world. He knew what my hobby was. He would do some of the exercises with my fighting in mind. And so I got really lucky with that in that respect. But it took me a while. And so the first time I truly put on armor and fought was at 50-year celebration. And that had been my goal. I wanted to be back in armor for 50-year celebration because, you know, I'm not going to travel all the way to Indiana and not fight, right? Well, I got there and they had this, I can't remember what they called it. There was a big tournament. What was it called? Anyways, they had this huge tournament thing. And there were different scenarios that the people who were competing in had to go in. And one of them was, there was a group of women who were defending, and I had been contacted by somebody to see if I wanted to be a part of that group. And I said, yes. And so when I went in and was fighting, I could not move. I was just super stiff and I was super frustrated by the end of that time. And then I started going to practices, but I got frustrated at practices because I wasn't moving like I thought I could, and I wasn't able to kneel still. And poor Morgan, I'm going to say this. Morgan would always fight with his damn bastard sword. And here I am, not able to hardly move, and I have to chase him. And in some ways that was good, but it really frustrated me. And so I kind of didn't continue for a couple of months. And then I came out for 12th night, and you put together that fighter practice with people I would feel comfortable with. And I fought there and things went well, and I never looked back after that. And at that point, that is when I started doing my pel work faithfully every day. So, and even then, I still wasn't able to kneel. So it took, I think it was almost a year and a half before I actually could kneel in my fighting. So I would take every leg as a kill.
Bet you got good at blocking your legs.
No, I died a lot.
Okay, then I have to ask a question.
Why would I start then? I mean, I spent a lot of time fighting for my needs because I fought with that round and I wasn't as good as I should have been on blocking my legs.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question about the round. Why were you so stubborn about fighting with a side mounted round? What is so special about that?
When I first started fighting, I went up to an event. My boyfriend and I went up to an event in Thousand Eyes. And we actually ended up we camped out in the backyard of this couple, Sigmund and Jillian. And we didn't have our own shield yet. And Sigmund was really excited and he gave us the shield, and it was a round shield. And Sigmund had a really big impact on me. And I decided that I wanted to do it with that damn round shield in honor of him. And so every time I'd run into him, he stopped playing like 2 years late after that. Every time I ran into him, he would, because he'd once in a while pop back, and he'd always ask me if I'd gone to the dark side. And I'm like, nope, still fighting with the round. And so really it was out of that is the whole reason I stuck with the round. And then I kind of got tired of a couple people telling me, well, you really need to switch to a heater. And it's just like, whatever, I'm going to stick with my round. Oh, it's going to be a lot harder path. Well, I guess it's going to be a harder path. So they probably made it worse. I might have thought about switching to the heater if it wasn't for some of the people who kept, hounding me to switch. Stubbornness. Did I mention I'm stubborn?
That's funny. That's really funny. Do we want to look at some of your pictures or?
Sure. Because I set them up so that there's stories attached to all of them.
All right, cool.
So let me
yeah.
share my screen. All right. Are you seeing my arms? Are we seeing it?
Not yet.
Oh, it's because I didn't hit the button. There we go.
There we go.
Okay. So I just thought I'd start off with my coat of arms. Obviously, the panther and the rats. My Ratslayer name, actually, there's a story behind the name Ratslayer. When I mentioned where I just discovered the SCA without it, that job I had, I was in charge of the rodent collection, and they used to call me the Rat Woman. And like I said, Dave, who is known in the SCA as Kian, when we went to my very first event, I was trying to come up with a name. Avaloch just happened to mention Kelwin, so that's where Kelwin came from. But the Ratslayer part, kind of like the Rat Woman, but I didn't really want to be the Rat Woman, but I thought the Ratslayer was pretty cool. And I heard of somebody called the Maggot Slayer. So I thought Ratslayer works great. So I actually became the Ratslayer. I documented for my documentation for my name. I had my supervisor write a letter stating that I had officially trapped, I think I had 50 rats we had trapped in that at that job because we were doing population studies. So I had that documentation as well. So I was truly the Ratslayer. So that's where Ratslayer comes from. But,
wow. I wish that my documentation had worked like that. But I also think it's super funny that Avaloch tries to name everyone.
Didn't he give you yours too at first, your original one?
He wanted me to be named Magda and I rejected it.
Oh. So here's some early pictures of me. The one up in the right was at Harvest War, which is one of our local events here in Artemisia. And we had a meeting. It was when I was in the Shire of Cote d'Ciel. We had a meeting and we were talking about things we wanted to do in the future. And I just said, let's have a war. And then Kian did all the work and started Harvest War. So that's from the second Harvest War. You can see armor. It's not my carpet armor anymore, but it's kind of slapped together with a lot of duct tape. Over on the left, next to it, I'm fighting Surismania she's down in Atenveld. I think this was right before she became a knight. I'm fighting in a pink tunic. Pink is my color. Then down on the bottom right, this was at a crown, probably around 1995, 90. Actually, no, it's got to be later than that. 90, actually, this is in 2002. That's right. And that pink tunic I'm wearing, I had put blue rats all around it. And I didn't do a very good job tacking them on. So they started falling off. So I started a tradition that when I had a really good fight, I'd rip off one of those blue rats and give it to the person I fought. So if there was a very honorable fight, I either gave it to them or to their consort. So that was a little fun thing I did. I still have that tunic floating around somewhere. So, and then, whoops, the other one was just another picture of a transitional period when I had a gambeson. So These two gentlemen are very, very important to me. The one on the left is Kian. He's the one who introduced me to the SCA. He is so much like my little brother. We have so much fun together. We're silly together. He has a very, very, very important part in my life. And the gentleman on the right is my SCA big brother. And when I went up to Thousand Eyes for an event, it was called a friendship tourney. And the whole purpose of that tournament is one fighter from Thousand Eyes and one fighter from Côte d'Ciel would form a team, and then you would the two of you would do various activities. We did a 3-legged race, javelin toss, and then we did 2-on-2 fighting. Well, I didn't really know anybody. Well, I knew a few people, but they were all quickly teaming up with all these other people. And there was this guy sitting on the picnic table. Really, honestly, we always joke, he didn't really look like much. Nobody really knew who he was. So I went over and asked him if he wanted to fight with me and be on my team. He said, sure. So we actually performed really well together. The 3-legged race, we did really well. And then when we fought 2-on-2, we worked really well together. When I got legged, he stayed with me and we did really well. And we ended up tying for first in this tournament. And so for the tiebreaker, we had to play croquet in our armor. So we ended up actually winning that tournament, and that sealed our friendship. And then he really became like my big brother in so many ways. His daughters and son think of me as their aunt. I think of them as my nieces and nephew. I just adore them. And so he is my big brother, and that's been a very, very, very important relationship to me over the years.
So for people who don't know who he is, who is that?
Oh, sorry. That is Duke Basil Derdrak. He was actually our first Duke in Artemisia that won both crowns in Artemisia. This slide has my heroes, my early heroes. Up on the left is Duke Brian Tarragon. My very first event that I went to at Cornet List, he was king. He overheard my boyfriend and I talking with some people and mentioned that we were from Utah. And he turned to us and started engaging with us. He knew we wanted to be fighters. He offered to help my boyfriend make his first set of armor. So my boyfriend went down to his house. He's always been so gracious. He's one of the most beautiful people to watch fighting on the field. I've never questioned his integrity on the field. I just think he's amazing. The woman in the middle is Sir Leah Dispenser. Like I mentioned, when I first started playing, I'd heard of her, but I hadn't met her for it was probably about 5 or 6 years before I actually met her. They had taken a break from the SCA at the time. This woman is incredible. She's a triple peer. Well, actually, she's a quad peer. She's also a viscountess. And she's been a landed baroness. She's in her 70s. She still fights. She still puts on her armor. She has been so encouraging to me over the years. The first time she told me I was awesome, I was on the cloud 9 for the rest of the event, because I just like this amazing person thinks I'm awesome. What? This is wow. So she has inspired me. She got knighted in 1985. So she's like the eighth woman knighted in the SCA. So inspirational. Down below in the left, it's she and her husband. They tend to not fight sword and shield anymore at wars, but they have their crossbows out, and they're still showing up and fighting at wars. And then the gentleman on the right is Duke Thorfinn, or Brian Penn, who spoke earlier. He was so welcoming when I first started fighting. There was an event I got my award of arms at. We were standing behind him, getting ready to fight, and there was another gentleman who was trying to tell my boyfriend and I what we needed to do, like we were brand new fighters, and I've been fighting for 2 years now. And I just remember Thorfinn turning around and looking at me, and he says, like, you guys need him to tell you what to do. And it was so cool that the king, took the time to recognize that we were regular fighters. And then the other thing he did was, there was an event where there wasn't really a tournament, but we all went out and we were just go out and fight. You decide how many fights you wanted to do with the person. And when I came up to him to fight, he was like, you know what? I really love fighting you. Let's do the best 5 out of 9. So we did the best 5 out of 9. I think I lost every single one of them. So it was really quick, those 5 fights. But he always treated me like I was just one of the other fighters. I never felt any, I know I've heard a lot of stories of women not feeling welcome in the fighting community. And I've never had that experience because I had so many people like this who have been so encouraging to me and just treated me like another one of the fighters. So, and he definitely was one of those people who's made me feel like I was just one of the regular fighters.
I love how you're telling stories about, you know, what might just be sort of offhand comments to any of these people, but because of who they were, it meant so much to you and it kept you around. And now you are one of those people that's words can impact people in a way that these people did for you. Yes. And it just, it's such a beautiful sort of tapestry of how the SCA works and about how important it is to be encouraging and positive and include people, because you just never know. You never know who's going to be the next pillar of your kingdom.
Yes. Yeah. I try really hard to watch my words. Sometimes I'm a little flippant and I'm a smart ass, but hopefully most people realize that. So this is my knight, or was my knight, Gareth. He was king. He was actually the last prince of Artemisia when we were the principality. And then he was king later on, 2007, I believe, 2008. And on the left is one of my squire brothers, Aquila, who lives out east now. And my relationship with Gareth was great for the majority of the time. But like I said, I gave back my belt in 2008, mostly because we really didn't have the opportunity to work together as knight squire. So he's still one of my good friends. We still talk. He followed my path the whole time and was always in the background for my path the whole time. So these people, so the gentleman up on the left was Baron Armand. He was one of my first consorts that I fought for. And he was an amazing gentleman. He was the 3rd Baron in our barony. He was the first openly gay person to serve in that capacity in the SCA. And he was a Laurel, and he just was this amazing individual who brought a lot of joy. He had the greatest laugh. I miss him so much. He moved to Antir, and then he passed away a few years back. Wonderful gentleman. And then the gentleman down below is Sir Richard Avonsley, who was actually my knight's knight at one point. And he's been my consort for probably the last 10 years now, at least, I think. And he's just one of those people who's always inspired me with his integrity. In 95, he lost part of his leg in a mining accident, and he came back and he fought for quite a while after that still. And now he's a little older, and he still talks about getting back in armor. I hope he does actually come back again. But so I still have been fighting for him, and that's his wife, Sorsha, who actually was queen with Gareth when he was king, my knight. So, and then these are a couple of people who have inspired me along the way and really made a huge difference in my path. The gentleman up on the left is Sigmund, the gentleman I mentioned who gave me the first shield. The other thing he did was, we had this fighter practice. I'd only been fighting probably a year, if that, maybe 2 years. And he worked with me for about a half an hour on fighting for my knees. He had legged me multiple times. He gave me the biggest bruise I've ever had in my life. But anyways, he worked with me for probably a half an hour with stuff. And I just thought it was the greatest thing in the world that he would take the time to work with me. And a couple of years later, he came over to me and he said, you remember that fighter practice where, we were fighting a little bit? He goes, I have to apologize that I didn't spend more time with you. He said, I wasn't sure if you were going to, continue on fighting. And I'm really happy to see that you're still fighting. And some people might say, oh gosh, that's kind of rude. But to me, it was like, wow, this guy spent this time with me that I was on the top of the world. I thought it was amazing. And he kind of felt bad because he didn't spend more time with me. And I thought that's kind of odd. But, he always was very supportive of me. So that is why I fought with that round shield for as long as I did. The gentleman in the middle is Sir Gregory of Beck. he's one of the first knights who really tried to help me figure out why I wasn't throwing my flat snap correctly. He is only a little bit taller than me, so he's understands my body type more, and he worked with me quite a bit and was always inspiring to me. And of course, the person on the right is Misty, or Sir Rithkin, and I wouldn't have made it on the path if it wasn't for Rithkin. She inspired me in so many ways. When she started doing her daily Pell work, it's what triggered me to say, dang it, I want to do that. I want to hit 1,000 days in a row of touching my sword. I only made it to 817, and then I forgot one night. So, but I got close. So these three individuals, I think, were really crucial in my path. And then these are just some amazing friends that I've had over the years. The gentleman in the left is Scruffy. He passed away in 2001. He was a herald, and he was one of the most amazing heralds you would ever meet. And he really helped me feel more comfortable being a court herald. And we could talk heraldry. I traveled to events quite a bit with him. I spent a lot of time just hanging out with him. He was a really fun individual. And then, of course, the person on the right is Laura Lynn. And like I said, we've been friends for over 30 years now. So she's always inspired me with her skills and the beautiful things she's created over the years.
She's a treasure.
So these are the walls that my household created for events, so that we would spice up our encampment. And so the next couple of slides are really my household, people in my household who are pretty dang cool. So although they're not officially the heads of our household, these are the two individuals that really are the driving force in our household. The gentleman, His Grace Conrad von Crixen, is super fun to fight, always wants to help you become a better fighter. Kind of a quiet guy, but has a really great sense of humor. And when you get him talking and he delivers his, fun little side comments, he's hilarious. Fun to watch fight. But he has the longest reach of anybody. And I always think I'm out of range, and I'm really not with him. And his wife, Duchess Courtland, I don't even know what I can say about this woman other than I never thought I would ever have a female friend that wasn't into sports. She's the most opposite of anybody could be to me. And she is one of the most dear people to me in the world. When I have a bad day, when I'm upset about something, she's usually one of the people I go to first. When I had my knee replacements, she made sure for 2 weeks that I had a meal every night. She organized it with the household that somebody would deliver a dinner to me every night. I can't even begin to describe how wonderful it is to have a friend like that. She makes sure everybody in our group feels like we're important. She organizes us like crazy. She's amazing. I can't say enough about how wonderful she is.
She's also been a huge support of our interviews, and really has helped us get guests, and has been an incredible cheerleader along our path. And we're very appreciative of her.
She's amazing. Yeah. And these are some of the other members of my household or my family. Sumaya and Yuri. Sumaya was my roommate for a while. She's been our Kingdom Seneschal. She's a double peer. Does some amazing embroidery. Just a really, really good friend. And Yuri and I met so many years ago. We both had disastrous relationships at the same time, and we became really good friends because we felt comfortable around each other. We could bitch about our previous relationships to each other, so it was a really good friendship. And then when he met Sumaya, it was wonderful to see him find such a wonderful person to be a part of his life. The couple on the right is Balinor and Tegan. They at one time were our Baron and Baroness. When they were Baron and Baroness, I traveled everywhere with them, and she always made sure there was Diet Dr. Pepper or Mountain Dew, depending on what I was drinking at the time, in the cooler for me. She always made sure I ate. Even though she was the Baroness, she was always taking care of me. and Balinor is just one of the most honorable fighters you'll ever meet. He's very beautiful to watch fight. He has lovely technique. One of the most wicked butt wraps in the world. I think I have permanent bruising from him, because remember I mentioned I didn't block very well. Well, yeah, he's one of them that got me all the time. So down in the left is Sarah, who is Laurel. I had the honor of sharing my vigil that night with her. She got her Laurel on the same day I got my knighthood, and she grew up in the SCA, and I didn't really know her until she was a little until she was an adult. And she's one of those people I just really, really, really enjoy hanging out with. And on the far right is her boyfriend, Gabe, Sir Gabe. He moved into our kingdom a couple of years ago and has had a huge impact on our kingdom. He brings so much fun to the game. But if you really sit down and talk to him, he is one of the most wise people I know. And he is so inclusive with everybody in the SCA. Everyone's a friend to him. He notices if people feel a little left out, and he'll make sure they're included. We were at a 12th night. We came up to a 12th night, and there was a woman sitting off to the side, and there was a group of us sitting together, and he turned to her and said, "Hey, would you like to join us?" And she included her with us in our discussion. And I'm pretty sure that made that woman's day, to be included with a group of people when she was off to her side. He has an amazing ability to really make people feel welcome.
And seen. He's really good at making people feel seen, especially
Yes.
children.
That's a great way of putting it.
Yep.
And he's my travel buddy. We started traveling together and going to all sorts of stuff. I brought him up to Antier. Now you guys won't let me come out without him. So he's a great guy. And then the two ladies in the middle. Wow. Pasha, I have known her almost since the very beginning of my SCA career. She has the most amazing voice. She is a feisty person, and when she is so loyal to her friends, and I love her to death. She's amazing. And next to her is Heloise, and she's Greg's wife. And she's another person who is very empathetic towards others. And if she notices somebody's uncomfortable or, maybe not feeling right, she always reaches out to those people and tries to make people feel welcome and comfortable in a situation. And she is super talented. She does some amazing calligraphy and illumination. You had her on your show a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And
last week,
all of her different scrolls I didn't realize she'd done so many, and hearing her talk about all the different things that she tried, and it was really cool to see. So these are just some of my really, really important people to me from my household. And this is one of my very favorite pictures ever. This was right before His Grace Conrad got his pelican, and we took a picture of all the ladies of our household around him. These ladies are, like I had mentioned, I never had a lot of female friends. I always was more comfortable with the men, but this group of ladies, I feel like I can be 100% me, even though I'm totally different than the rest of them, and they accept me for who I am. So, and this is just a couple pictures of the household. The picture up on the top was after their graces stepped down from their third reign. That's why we're all holding up 3 fingers, because it's the end of their third reign. It's not some weird gang symbol. It's just symbolizing their third reign, the end of their third reign. So. And these women are some of the women that I've had the joy of sharing the field with over the years. Up in the left is Her Grace Wren. This was the day after she got knighted, and with the squire's tourney, you have to have either be a squire, and at this point I wasn't a squire anymore, or have somebody squire you for the day. And so I went up to her and asked her if she'd squire me for the day, and it was so funny to see the look on her face when she realized what I was asking, and I got to be her first squire for that day. So, and then down below is Sir Ismenia. She's out of Aitenvelt, and I met her fighting in the what did they call that tournament? The female tournament down at Estrella. Like
a rose tourney.
What was that?
A rose tourney?
I think so. I can't remember what they called it. And we actually became friends after fighting in that tournament together. She actually won that tournament, and she has, at the time, she's a small lefty and had great technique, and just became a really good friend after that. And she inspires me all the time. And then up in the right is Susanna, who actually was in the mid realm, and then she moved to Antir, and I met her online. Well, I met her through Sir Elizabeth. She had given me her name because I needed a Gambison made, and we just started talking. She's the one who invited me to fight in that tournament at 20 year or at 50 year. And we became friends. And then when she moved out to Antir, we were able to actually spend time in person. And she's one of my very favorite people to go hang out with and fight with. And then on the below is Duchess Inga, who I met through her boyfriend at the time, which was Duke Vic. And she has become very dear to me. And we've shared the field on many occasions. And she's just one of those people who brings sunshine to everything. She's just so happy and knows everybody and wants everybody to have a great time and shares the love. So, but all four of these women I have been on the fighting field with on many occasions. And this is just a fun picture. You had mentioned that I traveled a lot. So I traveled up to Avacal so often that they made me an honorary citizen of their principality. And one of the things that they did one year is they all bought jerseys, and they asked me if I wanted to buy a jersey as well. They included me in that. So I also bought a jersey. And then this is a picture of just some of us. And these people, all of them I've known them throughout the majority of my SCA career. Unfortunately, the gentleman kneeling next to me passed away in a diving accident quite a few years ago. But of course, right next to me standing is Duke Vic. He looks pretty young. He still has hair. And then the woman second to the last, or standing second to last, that's Her Excellency Erica. And I met her at that very first Squires tournament I mentioned going to in '95. And we struck up a conversation, and she's one of the reasons I went up to Avacal to visit, because she was so welcoming, and she's so funny. If you've ever had the opportunity to hang out with her, oh my gosh, she has one of the best senses of humor. I love that woman. She took a big break from the SCA, but I hear she might be coming back, and I can't wait to see her because she's amazing.
Have my fingers crossed that she'll come back.
Yeah, same.
We might have to, once the border opens, we may have to go over and drag her to an event. These are just pictures to show that I'm not always in armor, that I actually do sometimes wear clothes other than armor. The picture on the left, I'm actually wearing His Grace Conrad's garb from his very first coronation. We had a masked ball that was come as someone else. I came as His Grace Conrad. I was so amazed that actually fit me. Now, it's almost floor length for me. Conrad, I think it goes just below, in his thigh area. So that's the big difference there in height. It's really fun fighting him, let me tell you. In the middle was we had a huge push for Norse in Artemisia, even though, Antir's never gone, completed that phase. We had a brief phase here in Artemisia. And then the one on the right, it was just one of those days where I actually, we were up at Salmon Arm up for a crown tournament. Was it a crown?
Yeah.
And that's one of my favorite pictures of me. And it was that was the day you got your lion.
So Norse is not a phase, it's a lifestyle.
Okay. These pictures are two of my very favorite events. The one on the left is Melee Madness. We get to fight in this amazing amphitheater. It's like a castle. And as you can see, there's all this rock that, and we're on just a pathway there. On just towards the back, there's actually a staircase that does a 90-degree turn that we fight up. so much fun. You feel like you're really there because you get pinned in and you have to figure out a way to break through up top, and you're kind of confined because you got that 90-degree turn, and super fun. And the other side, there's a ramp, and it's a super fun event. And then the one on the right is Harvest War. Like I mentioned, it was one of those when I was in my original group, Cote de Ciel, that we started that war. And there's a great little woods area that we play in, and I've always have a lot of fun there.
What's the first event with that staircase?
Oh, it's called Melee Madness.
Okay.
So, and here's just a couple of pictures of fighting. The one up top is the first crown I fought in after my knee replacement surgeries. The one below is a crown probably in the mid 2000s, I'm going to say. And then the picture on the right is that tournament I was talking about at 50-year celebration. You can see I'm real hesitant. I'm off in the back because I truly felt like I was walking like Frankenstein. And this picture is super significant. This is the first time I ever fought for my knees after my knee replacement. I didn't even think about it. I had come out of the pools, and so technically I made it into the quarterfinals of our crown tournament. And I got legged and I went down and I didn't even think about it. And then once I realized what I did, I got really super excited. Because it was a huge deal. I can't even describe what a huge deal it was to actually be able to kneel. And now we're going to move into that stuff for my knighting, my pictures for my knighting. So I don't know if we wanted to pause. I mean, I'm kind of babbling on here. If we want to pause.
Let's pause.
Okay.
Okay.
Because you were honored with a Griffin. Oh, I need to stop it for you, right?
Oh yeah, because for some reason it's not showing me.
So because you were honored as a Griffin of Artemisia before you were knighted, right?
Correct.
So can you explain to people who aren't from your kingdom what that is?
So the Griffin of Artemisia, Defender of the Dream, is the highest recognition you can receive in our kingdom. It's given out once a reign by the crown for those they feel epitomize what the SCA is. They, show the courtesy, just what we were here for. And I received it from Timur, and I want to say Tiana, but I think it was, oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, Timur, and whoever, if it was Sage or Tiana, I can't remember which. I was honored at one of our events, our mask ball here in Arnhold. The funny thing is, I almost didn't stay for the event. I was there and I was like, I'm just not really feeling it. I think it was right after my surgeries, maybe. Or no, it wasn't. It was later than that. But I just wasn't feeling it. And I'm like, I think I'm going to go home. And I mentioned that to Cortland, and she's like, well, you can't go because Valinor is going to get something. So that's, the thing you say, somebody else is going to get something. So I stayed, and then I received the Griffin, and I was very honored to receive that recognition.
I'm trying to look it up on your OP, but it doesn't list the royalty that awards the thing.
Oh, really? It should.
I want to say it was Sage, but I don't know.
Yeah, I can't remember. I feel horrible.
So was that sort of like, was your mind blown? I mean,
yes.
Okay.
Totally blown. And then I got the scroll, and the scroll, Her Excellency Heloise did the scroll, and the scroll was so, I wish I didn't have a chance to take a picture of it. She did show it a couple weeks ago, and it's really cool because it's got 4 little scenes, and the first scene is Misty and Sarithkin and I fighting. And it was, when I realized who that was, I was so excited. I just thought it was the coolest thing because it was so personalized. So I loved that about it.
Very cool. So should we talk about the process of you getting knighted and how that came about?
Sure. So I, like I had mentioned, when I had after my knee replacements and I got back into the fighting, I started doing my pub work religiously, and it was amazing how much more I learned in a fight, because I didn't have to worry about my shots anymore. I didn't have to worry about if they were hard enough, if my technique was wrong. because I felt confident in my fighting and in my sword work. And so it really allowed me to get off that plateau I had been on for quite a while. And then the other thing that I did, well, there was a couple other things that I did to help encourage myself to continue on, was I started a Facebook group with just 10 women that I admired. And 9 of them are fighters, and one of them just happened to be a woman I played football with, who is so cool and inspiring. And by doing that, I kept myself accountable, and I would talk about what I was doing with my fighting, and so it encouraged me to keep moving forward. And then they started the Shiv Hunt, which was Liam and Anton started the Shiv Hunt, and the goal was to fight at least 50 chivalry in a year. And at first I thought, well, that sounds like it could be pretty easy. It's not as easy as I thought it was going to be. But anyways, I put my mind to that I was going to do that. I was going to fight 50 knights. And I decided that I wasn't even going to start counting anybody in Artemisia. I really wanted to do 50 knights outside of Artemisia. But I ended up having to do a few from Artemisia as well, because I ran out of time. But it really got me motivated to go up to people and ask them if I could fight, or if they would fight me, because sometimes you're a little hesitant to go up to somebody because you feel like you're wasting their time or whatever. But I knew I had this goal, and I had to fight at least 3 fights with them. So I got my book, and this is my book right here, and I periodically go back and look through it. And anytime I fought somebody, I'd have them write write a little bit about our fights. And every time I went back and I looked at what they wrote, I started to realize that I actually I was a better fighter than I thought I was. They were talking about how good my technique was, how I was doing this right. They always gave me advice on what I needed to work on, but they also told me all these positive things. And it really made a huge difference in my confidence. And I know I mentioned that I've had lots of wonderful people I fought with in Artemisia. Artemisia is amazing. But one of the things the guys never did was tell me what I was doing right, because they knew me so well. And so they would always just, hey, you need to work on this. You need to work on this. And I really felt like, for the longest time, I really felt like I was a new fighter all the time. And doing the Shiv Hunt helped me realize that I was doing some things right, and that I had some skills that I didn't realize I had. So that gave me a confidence that I didn't have before. And I think something after doing that, I ended up doing 59 fights with different knights. I think like 17 of them were dukes, and I hit 9 I fought people from 9 different kingdoms, so that was really cool. And I got a lot of them at the Adult Swim. I went to Adult Swim. Sarithkin and I went to Adult Swim. Talk about a lot of fun. That's probably one of the coolest just straight pickup fighting you could ever do, is at Adult Swim. So it gave me this confidence that I hadn't had before. And so I still was totally blown away when they offered me my knighthood. And the way they did it, they called me up. Well, His Majesty Floki, one of the things he did on one of his reigns was he started the Valkyries for women who were fighting in the kingdom, and he would give us all little tokens. And the first time he did it, he called all these women up, and he didn't call me up. And this was his second reign. And I was so mad. Oh my God, I was so upset. I'm like, you're calling all these other women up to recognize them for women who have been fighting. You're giving them this little token. And I've been around longer than all of them. Shit, I've been around twice as long as most of them. And so then I'm like, well, you know what? I don't really want to be known as a woman fighter anyway, so I don't really care. So then on that crown tournament that his crown, he called me up and made a special gesture to give it to me at that point. So, but anyway, so this third reign, he calls all the Valkyries up, and he presents us all the little tokens, and then he has me stay. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? And then he starts talking about the Shiv Hunt and how I had participated in the Shiv Hunt. I was the only one in Artemisia who actually completed it. And I actually ended up taking 5th overall in the entire known world for the number of fights I had done. And so, I'm like, oh, that's cool. Yeah. And, you know, he was talking about it. And then he called up all the members of the Order of the Chivalry, and I just lost it. There's a video of it, and you can hear me sobbing on the video, because I was just so blown away, overwhelmed. And then it was kind of funny, because then it realized things came together a little more. Sir Rithkin was supposed to be at that event, and she wasn't able to make it because she had stomach flu. Another friend of mine was at the event, and he hadn't shown up to an SCA event in a long time, but I thought it was because of it was Floki's coronation, because this gentleman was his squire. And he's like, no, I was here for you. And a couple other little things kind of made sense then afterwards, because there was a couple times where I was like, that's kind of odd that they said that to me. And then it all made sense. But it was, I was so overwhelmed. I can't even describe how I felt, other than totally shocked and blown away. And then they told me that they were going to knight me at Raptor War, which was almost 6 months away. So I had all this time to think about it and prepare, of course, but I really can't tell you how up and down I went about, am I really a knight? Do I deserve to be a knight? Is my skill set there? Are they just being nice to me? You know, I grew up fighting with Floki. We started out around the same period of time and known him all this time. He actually helped me quite a bit on my path as well, some of the fighting. And I'm like, do I really deserve it? And just up and down the whole time. And, you know, it was great to have all that time to plan. But, you know, people out there, if you're ever crowned, don't make it 6 months for a person. It's just a little too long for them to think about it. So, but anyway, so then I started, you know, it was so weird after that to go to events, and I just kept traveling like crazy. But it was weird to know that I almost was at my goal, and what was I going to do afterwards, and how are things going to change? And you know, I was able to fight in an on-tier crown right before, was 2 months before my knighting, and His Majesty knew that I was on vigil. And when they do a processional and on tier, and obviously you guys know this, and you always line the knights up on one side and the squires the squires and unbelts on the other side, and then they go and choose. Well, he invited me to stay on the unbelt side, because it would be the last time that I would have that opportunity. And even though we don't do that anymore in our crowns, we do pools now. We used to do that back in the day, and I always thought that was the coolest thing, to be able to go across and choose that person. So having that opportunity again. And once again, one of the big things I always liked to do when we did that back in the day was try and choose the person who was going to win the tournament as my first fight. And I was pretty successful quite a few times. I chose Thorfinn more than once. And that day I actually chose the winner of the tournament as well. So really, really cool honor that he did that for me. But yeah, it was so surreal to be on vigil. And then the support I had from my friends. You guys made my vigil garb, which part of it I'm wearing right now. It was so amazing how you helped me with that. And my household, oh my God, my household, they planned my vigil. They helped me with my ceremony. They helped me with my knighting garb. They listened to me go crazy and just were, oh man, I could have never done it without them. Just so much support. Our encampment was amazing. My vigil, they made sure it was everything I'd hoped for. And then later on, there's some other things that they did for me that I'll show you on the rest of my slides. But yeah, they just, wow, I couldn't have asked for a better group of people to support me.
Before we look at your slides, and I think we should, what advice would you have to somebody who's put on vigil like that, to avoid sort of the head trauma that you gave yourself?
Oh, wow. Just make sure you're around people who are going to tell you the straight scoop and that you trust them. I mean, one of the best things for me was traveling with Gabe, and Gabe's a straight shooter. He tells you when you fight like shit, and he tells you when you're doing good. And Gabe really truly believed that I deserved to be a knight, and that helped. And I had a couple other people like that who showed me the support and really talked to me about being a knight and made me feel that I was worthy. So I think surrounding yourself with people who you trust and is very important.
Cool. Why don't you bring up your slides, because you had an amazing knighting ceremony.
Oh man, I was okay. Let me make sure I grab the right screen. There we go. Okay. So I'm assuming you can see my pictures with the shields. So one of the cool traditions we have in Artemisia is when somebody's put on vigil, all the knights place their shields around the vigil tent. So you can see there's quite a few shields around my tent, and it's really cool because a lot of the shields I can pick out whose they are. Like on the bottom right, you can see Sir Rithkin's shield right there nicely. Up on at the left, there's His Grace Conrad's. His is the one with the double-headed eagle, and then in the background are Sir Robert and Leah Dispenser, who I mentioned earlier are two of the most amazing people in the SCA. And so being able to go back and look at these pictures is really cool, because seeing all those shields, it's just really I think it's one of the coolest traditions we have.
I do too. It's just such a show of solidarity and support by the order that I wish we did.
Yeah, really cool.
Maybe we should make that so.
Make it so.
So here's a few pictures from my ceremony itself. On the left, I'm receiving the chain from Her Majesty Gwen, and then I'm getting dubbed by His Majesty Floki. The gentleman in the background with the camera, he is actually a lieutenant for the Idaho State Police, and he's actually one of my real life heroes. He's a pretty cool guy. He when I first met him, I think he was just a trooper, and he was in our office. I work in the Office of Highway Safety, so I interact with law enforcement a lot. And he came into our office, and I have pictures all over my file cabinet of fighting in the SCA. And he asked me if I was in the SCA, and he said, I'm a fan of the SCA. His wife had an anthropology degree, and so they were, he had done some digs with her, but he really thought the SCA was pretty cool. One of the cool things about this gentleman is he's also a trauma nurse. And so he twice a month, he'll actually work at the hospital as well doing trauma. But the coolest thing about this gentleman is he always has, even though he works in law enforcement and sees some of the worst of society, he always feels that everybody's redeemable and that everybody is good and they've just made bad mistakes. And I feel that's a really cool quality to have. So I invited him to my knighting, and I was so thrilled that he actually showed up. So really cool to have your real life hero, one of your real life heroes, show up. So, and then on the right is Her Grace Inga holding up my amazing scroll that she made for me. I told her I wanted it colorful, and she said, okay, what kind of things do you want on it? And then I gave her all sorts of things about who I wanted on it, what I wanted represented it on there. And she put together this amazing scroll that is super colorful and has the people on it. I'm on the right. It's myself and Rithkin and Ismania and Leah. Those are some of the women who inspired me. On the left is Kian, and Gareth's arms are up top, and Cortland and Conrad's are down below next to mine. The households, people from the household are all over it. Super cool. My teddy bear's on there because my teddy bear Livingston goes to all my events with me. He travels everywhere with me. So just really an amazing scroll. She did I couldn't have asked for a better scroll. So, and then this was I had 5 women, 4 other women knights at my knighting ceremony. Really, Leah's on the end, and then Kaylee from the Outlands, who she and her husband Mavriki always came over for our event Uprising. And then Rithkin, and then Duchess Wren. They all came for my knighting. The belt that I'm wearing in this picture, it was given to me by Sir Kaylee, and then actually the belt originally was created by Duchess Rowan, who was the first woman to win a crown and by her own hand. And it was passed on to Sir Madigan when she became the first female knight of the Outlands, and then she passed it on to Kaylee, and Kaylee passed it on to me. And wow, when she came in and at my vigil and presented that to me, I was dumbfounded. I couldn't have asked for a cooler legacy, because, you know, we have all these legacies and things being handed down from people to people, but this is actually the female knights kind of legacy. It's unique kind of to the women knights, and not that I really, you know, want to put myself as a lady knight. I'm a knight that just happens to be a woman. It still is really cool to have something that's meaningful to the women. So the other amazing thing, that my ceremony was amazing. I had so many people that I loved at this event that came for this event to be there for me. And I had asked my friend Pasha to sing for me at my ceremony. I told her she could sing whatever song she wanted. And I was just expecting, you know, her to sing a song and it would be wonderful. Well, my group of friends decided to all be involved in this song, and behind my back, they did it like on weekends when I wasn't around or whatever. They got together and they planned to sing this song for me. And so I'm actually going to play the song for you, because it really was an emotional moment for not only me, but for a lot of women. And I think it was very empowering for women. And I don't have it on this recording, but she starts off with saying that all the women join in the chorus, and then the men should not join in with the chorus because of the song. And so I'm going to go ahead and play this. It's very much I almost lost it at this point when this song was being sung, but here we go. So the other cool thing about this is Pasha asked permission of Windrith Burgessdottir, who is actually the woman who wrote this song, for her to sing the song at my knighting, and she actually modified a couple of the verses so that it was more relevant to my knighting. So that was really cool too, that she was able to do that.
This was one of the most powerful moments I think I've ever experienced at an SCA event. Because it was kind of like all of the women of your kingdom were seeing you and singing you into your elevation. And it was just really, really, really moving.
It was the best gift anybody could have ever given me, to be honest.
Agreed. It was very moving.
They're awesome, my friends.
Is that the end of the slideshow? Should I stop sharing?
Actually, this is just for levity. This is my last picture. So like I mentioned, I work in highway safety, and I always swore I would never wear my garb for Halloween. And one year I really was struggling with what to do for Halloween. So I decided to go as a dead warrior. Just so happened they were shooting for billboards and for our media campaign. So they drugged me over and they did a little media campaign with 3 of us in our Halloween costumes.
That's hilarious.
And that's all my slides. So I actually think I can stop share now. I figured it out. It was the wrong screen.
I found somebody asked if we could share the video of the song, and I think I found it. So I will get the link and share it in the comments so that if you want to watch it again without any delay or whatever, you can do so.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's cool. I don't think Pasha will mind. She has such an amazing voice.
I think it's on my Facebook.
I just found it.
Okay.
It's just a matter of me going back and doing it. So.
The link.
So you got knighted and then we entered a pandemic.
I know. Wow. I got to fight in 1 crown, and that was it before the pandemic hit. And I actually came out to 12th night and did some pickup fighting there. And that's pretty much all I really gotten to do to fight. I went to an Outlands crown, but I didn't fight over there. But it was kind of interesting. I've been to four night circles in 4 different kingdoms. So
how's that? I mean, is it different than you thought it would be?
A little bit, but not really, because I've been in pelican circles for so long. But it is different. It is interesting to see the differences between kingdoms. So the first circle I sat in was in the Outlands. And then I went up to Avacal for a coronation, and I sat in their night circle there. And then our crown, or I guess it was our crown first, and then Avacal's coronation. So I sat in an Artemisian one, and then at 12th night I sat in the Antir one. And I have to say the Antir one was probably the most I don't want to say organized, but there were so many more people at that compared to the other circles that I was in. And so it was more intense.
We are so large that we don't really have the kind of informality and discussion. Like, you guys actually have conversations, and we do not have that because we're too big to have that. Mm-hmm. And I actually think it's to our detriment.
Yeah, we generally get 45 minutes for kingdom level peerage meetings. And we have a lot of people at those meetings. So it's really
hard.
Yeah.
There had to be at least 60 to 70 nights at that 12th night meeting, at least.
Mm-hmm. So. Right. More than there are nights in our entire kingdom. So. Because I think I was the 52nd member of the chivalry to be made, and 51st night. We have 1 master at arms. Obviously, we have knights from when we were part of 8 belts as well. But
so, Kelwin, I'm actually a little bit surprised that you've never served as like a landed baroness or anything like that. Do you have ambition to have a landed role or to be royalty?
I would like to possibly be queen someday, but I don't think I have. I'm super emotional, and I don't think that would serve me well as a baroness. I think that I would be too caught up. I'm one of those people who always wants to make everybody happy. And I think at the baronial level, it's a lot harder to not go crazy trying to do that. And so I've never wanted to. I almost put my ring in the hat once because at that time it didn't seem like anybody was going to do it. And I said, well, if nobody does it, I will volunteer to put my name in. But then multiple people came forward and put their names in, and I'm like, well, that's good. And they are all, I mean, we've always had good candidates. And so I have no desire to take on that role. But I would like to do queen because I think you get to do more just it's not as much administrative, I guess. You get to spend more time giving out awards and doing that kind of stuff than trying to take care of a group of people at the same level. Because at the baronial level, you're a lot closer to everybody you're interacting with. And at the kingdom level, you're a little bit more separated from some of those people. And so I'm just way too emotional, I think, to be a baroness.
And at a baronial level, it's a long length of time,
Mm-hmm.
the sustaining of that kind of work that I find super intimidating, and I respect the heck out of anybody who does that job because
wow. And we've been really lucky in our barony. We've only had a couple that were less than stellar. I mean, our current baroness is awesome. She's Varia, who was the woman I mentioned earlier, who started a couple months after me. We both started in Côte de Ciel, and we both ended up in Arnhold. And she's doing a great job as baroness. And that we've always had good people you mostly have good people come forward to do the job. So
that's awesome. So do you have any plans?
We'll see how it goes.
Do you have any plans to take any squires anytime soon? Did you decide that you were going to wait a certain amount of time, or what was your plan with that?
Definitely going to wait. And I'm working on becoming a better trainer before I take on the responsibility of somebody. Sir Sagan has started doing some training here with us. And part of that is him helping me become a better trainer. So
it's awesome.
So one of the cool things I know you've done during the pandemic is you've been a real sort of mover and shaker in getting the women of the Shiv to interact more socially. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I'm a very social person and I live alone. And so during the pandemic, I really didn't have much of an outlet. I became a crazy cat lady during the pandemic. I've taken care of quite a few strays now. But one of the things that I had met multiple of the Lady Shiv throughout my SCA career, and some of them become friends. But a lot of them didn't really seem to know each other. And so we have our Facebook group, but there's not a lot of interaction going on there. People post occasionally. And because I decided to get a Zoom account at one point, I decided it would be nice if we could actually do Zoom. And we did that, the ladies of the chivalry roundtables. And so we started doing a couple of Zooms for that to help talk about what we were going to do with that. And then I just continued on every couple of months. I would say, hey, let's do a Zoom. And it was kind of selfishly because I wanted to get to know more people. And again, I like to talk and socialize. And so it was a nice thing to look. It was something to look forward to when it would, just be me sitting in front of the television watching various shows.
Well, I want to thank you personally because it's been so great to get to know my sister knights and to sort of develop relationships around the world with people that have had similar experiences. And we don't all have the same experience, and that, and work in a way together where we can influence things in a positive way. So I really appreciate the effort that you've put in and sort of uniting us. and we have some pretty spirited discussions because we don't all agree on things, but it's really cool to be able to have those discussions.
It's really cool too when somebody starts talking about some fighting thing and you see people getting up and grabbing their swords or grabbing their shields, and then we start talking about it. I think that's the coolest part about the whole thing is the enthusiasm, and we all love fighting. There's no doubt that every bit of person there loves to get on the field. So.
Do you, as a woman, I know that there are pressures to be like a role model or to do certain things to foster the female fighting community. How do you feel any pressure, or do you have plans to do anything in that capacity?
I feel a ton of pressure. I've always felt pressure. Every time I've stepped on the field, I always feel like for the longest time, I always felt like I was representing all of the women in the world, and that if I sucked, it reflected bad on all of the women, all the other women. And so I always felt a lot of that pressure. And now it's a different pressure. Now I feel like I have to make sure I engage all the women out there who are wanting to fight, and that I have to be this role model. And it's kind of a lot of pressure in a lot of ways. And so I'm not sure I've really come up with a way of things that I want to do, but I did actually reach out to the first female MOD in our kingdom. And we've talked about some of the things we want to do together to encourage women fighting, because it doesn't really matter what form you're fighting. It's important to encourage women to do what they really want. If they really want to try it, that they have an opportunity to try it, that they feel safe, and that it's an environment that is encouraging.
Yeah, there's been so much discussion over the pandemic about how to make the fighting community and fight practices more equitable, especially for gender minorities, people that identify as women or don't, identify as binary, or they're non-binary. I guess that's the right term. And I feel like as women knights, we're sort of expected to lead the charge. And it is a lot of pressure, but I guess what I want to say to you is just being who you are is enough. So I just want to let you know that there's a reason why you got knighted, and who you are is enough.
Yeah.
So
thank you. It is a little intimidating still, but honestly, my philosophy has always been just go out and do what brings you joy, and don't let anybody stand in your way. And so I hope that I can show that to other people, so that they too step forward and do what they find brings them joy, and not feel any reservation about it.
I think it's been really nice during this interview that you've been so candid about accepting that you're worthy of the role, and because I think everybody goes through that, and I think sometimes, especially when you're the first woman to be knighted in your kingdom by your kingdom, there's a lot of pressure there, and I think it's important for people to know that it's okay to question your value, and that's normal. So I appreciate you being open about that.
I'm an open book. I'm maybe a little too honest at times.
I don't know if there's such a thing as too honest, as long as you're kind.
I try.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah.
I'm sorry, my dog is snoring really loud. I don't know if you heard.
Oh, Maisie. He is loud too, man. I love that dog though. But yeah.
So Kelwin, if people wanted to go to Artemisia and check it out and see what it has to offer, and see the culture, what event would you recommend?
Tough one. We have a couple of really good ones. I mentioned Melee Madness. That one is really cool because of the site, because it is that medieval type amphitheater. Raptor War, where I got knighted, is one of my very favorite events. It's always a good time. It's right now we're back at this. We're at the same site that I was knighted at, which has the river nearby. It's got a lot of trees. If we get lucky, we won't have the flies. And
yeah, without the flies, that's like a near perfect site.
Yeah.
yes, and yes. So there's that one. Uprising used to be the go-to event, but it's changed a little bit over the years. And that used to be our largest event. It still may be our largest event. I'm not sure. So that one is a really good one as well. Anything really small or the larger ones in Artemisia, you're going to get a good taste of our culture. We're a very welcoming kingdom. We don't take ourselves too serious most of the time. Sometimes we probably should take ourselves a little more serious than we do, but we are very much a welcoming kingdom, and we're very small, so most of us know each other. So that can be hard for somebody because we're all so comfortable with each other. We're not going to necessarily, you're not going to it's harder to feel like you can come up to us because we're all, but anybody who comes to Artemisia, just walk up and start talking to us. We're actually love new people, and we love to include people in what we do.
Well, I know both Ashaxi and I always feel very welcome when we're over there, and we love your household. Households, at least in the way we play on tier, aren't really a big factor, and I love the way you guys do households.
Yeah, it makes me wish that we were more householdy here because it's so supportive.
And it's not really as much of a household as it is a family. So,
pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm pretty lucky. I feel very blessed with where I'm at.
So y'all are starting to have in-person events here coming up pretty quick.
Crowns in 3 days.
So no pressure, but I would love for you to win crown this weekend, and then I would love to win our crown whenever we decide to have a crown. And I would love for us to come up with a 3-day war between Ontir, Abacol, and Artemisia.
Well,
that's an event that needs to happen.
I think so. The only, I like I said, I'm starting to train towards maybe improving my chances at winning a crown. I have to get out of my own head first. So.
Well, I was really hoping that I could make it over for your crown, but that's not going to happen because of work. But I'm sending my best wishes. I don't think crown has anything to do with luck, but to all of my Artemisian friends, including you, I hope that you guys have a really clean tournament and it's super well contested. And please, 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 somebody broadcast it live virtually.
I'm pretty sure we will have it live. I can't guarantee it, but we usually do have somebody doing it because I think that's one of the coolest things with the pandemic is we've gotten comfortable doing some of this virtual stuff, and we did the one night where we all watched the Lockhart crown together, and that was so cool to be able to sit and watch their crown, knowing it's halfway around the world and still being able to see it. So I hope somebody does because it's really fun to watch other people's tournaments.
For sure.
So I don't know if I don't think I have anything else, but I know Kelwin really well. So if I forgot something.
we're at 2 hours. So yeah. I think,
wow.
Yeah.
I can talk. I just want to say one last thing. Never give up on your goals. Never give up on your dreams. Even if it takes 30 years, it's well worth it.
Well, and I know we didn't talk about your age, but you got knighted after 50.
52.
52. And you
53.
You were fighting over 30 years? Is that right?
Right at 30 years.
So all these people that always ask, is it too late? It's never too late if you're willing, if you love it and you're passionate about it and you're willing to put in the work. It's never too late.
Nope.
And
even if you never reach knighthood, you still get all the joy of the fight.
Yeah, and look at Sir Leah. She's still fighting in her 70s. So I
inspired too.
Yeah, I hope that I'm Sir Leah in my 70s.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me on here. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you for being on with us and for being our last interview before our break. We're going to take a month to sort of get grounded with our families and
Yeah.
do some stuff, and hopefully maybe we will have the border open and we'll actually have a crown event sometime soon.
And we're not sure if we're going to come back at once a week or every other week. We kind of need some space to think about that and see where we're going to be moving forward. We are very much supporting Voices of Color, which starts next week, which is, we are not hosting it. They have their own Facebook page. I think it's SCA Voices of Color. Please go like and follow them. I think that there are going to be some really important conversations that we all need to be listening to.
And that's Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific.
Yes.
And I will still be doing Leveling Up during July. I'm taking this weekend off for the 4th of July, but I'll be back next week with Sir Casimir, who originally is from Atenville, but in Montier now. And he's a master shield maker, and he's going to teach us all his tricks and secrets. So tune in for that. That's Sundays at 6 p.m. Pacific. So
Thanks, everyone.
yeah, thanks everyone for supporting us over the last year and 3 months, and we really appreciate it, and it's been quite a ride, and we look forward to seeing you when we come back.
Thank you, Kelwin.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Kelwin. Bye-bye.
Bye.